What's up guys, Asian here again with another Build Basics video. Today we're going to be talking about dots and how they inherit damage. Inherit damage, I should say. So there are basically two different types of dots in this game. There are ground AoE dots, so things like blockade, twisting path, endless hail, caltrops. So those are one type of dots, and the second type of dots are what we like to call single target dots. So those are things like poison injection, crippling grasp, basically any sort of dot that only affects one enemy at a time. Ground dots can be thought of broadly as any dot that you cast that can affect, I should say, many enemies at a time. So there is a little bit of confusion as to how they inherit their damage, and so today hopefully I'll be able to clear up some of the confusion that's kind of arisen around these dots. So a couple of things we're going to look at. So we're going to be looking primarily at the ground dots and the single target dots, as well as whether they inherit damage from their cast bar or their bar you're currently on. And we're going to be looking at damage, how they inherit, whether things like spell damage affects it. Then we're going to be looking at penetration, how does penetration affect it. Then we're also going to be taking a look a little bit at crit chance and crit modifier as well. How does that affect it? So there's going to be three different things that we're going to be looking at throughout this video. So I'm on my Nightblade right now. We're going with the Nightblade because they have class abilities that are both a ground dot as well as a single target dot, so we don't have to worry about which type of staff we're using, because the Ancient Knowledge passive under the Destruction Staff line does have a stipulation that you need to have a Destruction Staff ability slotted. So we don't have any Destruction Staff abilities slotted at all. So we only have Twisting Path and Crippling Grasp on both bars, so that way the bars are exactly the same. In terms of gear, I have absolutely nothing equipped right now except for our weapons, so we're not going to have any sort of variation in our gear at all. So the only thing that's going to be changing are going to be either damage. So basically we're going to be doing any old staff versus a Nirnhone staff, so this increases our spell damage. So if you take a look here, you can see here on my non-Nirnhone staff we're sitting at 1335, and then we're on a Nirnhone staff that we're sitting at 1535. So this is how we're going to be doing when we test out how damage affects both of them, so spell damage. And then we're going to be taking a look at how penetration affects both of them. So we'll be going with a sharpened staff, so sharpened, and then we're also going to do just a plain staff as well. So that way they have the exact same spell damage, and the only thing that's changing is going to be our penetration value. And then finally, we're going to be taking a look at crit value. So that's going to be a little bit different compared to everything else. So basically, we're on our Nightblades because Nightblades also happen to get additional crit whenever we have an assassination ability slotted. In addition, we also get additional crit damage done whenever we have an assassination ability slotted. So what we're going to do is we're going to slot Impale on one of our bars and then not have it on our back bar here, and we'll see the crit chance, basically how many hits managed to crit during while we're on this bar compared to this back bar here. So crit chance is going to be a little bit more difficult to test in terms of when we swap over, because crits are affected by RNG. It is a probability, so you know, we might, if you have 20% crit chance, on average you should see 20% of your hits be crits. But if anybody has parsed many times on a dummy before, you know that the amount of crits that you get, the number of critical hits you get, is going to be different. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to test how crit affects damage on both of these, but I will tell you basically how it affects you. More or less, critical damage is always going to be what's on your current bar, not on the cast bar for both abilities. Now, I've been saying cast bar and current bar, so what do those exactly mean? So cast bar can be thought of as the bar that you are on when you cast the ability or when the ability hits. So, for example, Crippling Grasp, for instance, if I cast it on my back bar and don't bar swap cancel out of it, then my cast bar is considered to be my back bar. If I happen to bar swap cancel from the back bar to my front bar before the first hit happens, then my cast bar is going to be my front bar instead. So most single target dots do have this affinity here, so you can do the exact same thing with poison injection. As long as you do the bar swap before that first tick hits, then the cast bar is going to be on your front bar instead of your back bar. So Nightblades and pretty much every single stamina DPS takes advantage of this by bar swap canceling out of Crippling Grasp or Poison Injection, so that way they get the damage from the cast bar is going to be your front bar instead. And then when I say current bar, that's just which bar you're currently on. So if I'm on my front bar, I'm currently on my front bar. If I swap my back bar, then my current bar is obviously going to be my back bar. So we're going to start things off first with a test on our damage. So like I said, we're going to have a Nirnhone staff on the back bar and then just a plain infused charge staff on the front bar. It doesn't matter that they're Inferno and Lightning. Like I said, we don't have any sort of additional modifiers here because we don't have a destruction staff ability slotted. So how does spell damage affect dots? So let's start off first with ground dots. So ground dots, AoE dots, inherit the damage that on your current bar. So you can see here we're taking for 861 on our non-Nirnhone bar. If I swap my Nirnhone bar, you can see that the ticks go up to 908, and I swap back, it drops back down to 861. So your ground dots will always inherit the damage of the bar that you are currently on, not the cast bar. Now, what about, so we're going to let Twisting Path completely expire before we test the next thing. So how about Crippling Grasp? This is a single target dot. So we're on our back bar right now. It's taking for 1232. If I swap, the damage doesn't change. If I cast it on my front bar here, it ticks for 1167 normally without the crit. If I swap to my back bar, that number doesn't change. So it's affected by the cast bar, not your current bar. Now, I've mentioned that you can bar swap cancel out of Crippling Grasp, so if I bar swap cancel Crippling Grasp from my non-Nirnhone bar to my Nirnhone bar, you can see here that even though I cast it on my front bar, I was on my back bar when the first tick happened, so it inherited the damage from the Nirnhone bar instead of the plain bar. So you can see here I'm hitting 1232. This is without the bar swap cancel. If I bar swap cancel, you can see it's starting at 1167 instead. So this is why bar swap canceling out of your single target dots is very important, both as a Nightblade and as a stamina DPS. So you'll see a lot of Magicka DPS when they're doing their parses. A lot of them have their Crippling Grasp on their back bar, and they will always end their back bar rotation with Crippling Grasp, so that way they can bar swap cancel to their front bar, which typically has more spell damage or higher crit chance. Alright, so that's how damage affects both of these. So let's see about penetration. So we're going to swap our Nirnhone staff with a sharpened staff now. So now the only thing that's different is going to be our penetration value, so we have higher penetration on our back bar. So now we're going to start off with the ground dots, so that's going to be Twisting Path. So we're hitting for 861, and if we swap to our back bar, we're hitting for 927 now. So there was an update, we're not exactly sure when, it probably happened, I want to say the earliest that we noticed this was probably around Dragon Bones, but in the past, penetration was always on the bar that you were cast on. Now it seems like penetration is inherited on your current bar instead. So you can see here we're taking for 927 on our sharpened bar, but if we swap to our non-sharpened bar, we lose the additional penetration and we end up with lower ticks. And it's the exact same thing with our single target dots. We're hitting for 1167, swap to our back bar, and we're hitting for 1257. So both single target dots and ground dots inherit this penetration on your current bar instead of your cast bar like it used to be back in the day. So that was an update. It used to be that it would be inherited from your cast bar. So now we're going to go ahead and use a plain old Inferno staff. And now we're going to try out crit damage. So remember that our crit damage typically is going to be an extra 50%. I will take out all of the points from Elfborn, so that way we don't have any additional damage from the Elfborn. So now right now we should be sitting at 50% additional damage from our crits. So if we take a look here, Crippling Grasp, 1167 is our normal hit, which means when we crit, we should be hitting for about 600 more. So you can see 1167, and when we crit, I think it was 17 something. Might be better to do it with Twisting Path. So 861 is our normal hit. Come on, crit. So 1291 would be our crit, our critical hit. So now, like I said, we are going to put on our back bar, we're going to put Impale. We're not going to use it. So this should increase our critical damage done by 10%. And it should also increase the number of crits that we see here. This isn't a very large increase. This is a 2% increase in crit. So it's not, we're not going to really see a difference in the number of crits that we get, but we should see a difference in crit damage. So our crits here, we're hitting for 1377. If we swap to our back bar, see if we can get a crit. 1291. So you can see here that crit damage modifier is inherited from the bar that we are currently on versus the bar that it was cast on. And it's the exact same thing for our single target dots. So if we cast a single target dot, you can see 1167. See if we can get a crit going. Come on, crit. Nope. So there's our crit. It was 1828. If we swap to our bar without Impale, I don't think we're going to get a crit. We get 1751. So you can see here that crit damage is inherited from your current bar instead of your cast bar there. And it's the same thing with crit chance. The crit chance is inherited from your current bar, not your cast bar. It's, like I said, it's really hard to test crit chance because of the whole RNG factor involved in it, but that's the way it goes. Generally speaking, you won't see that big of a crit difference between bars. The only class that you might see a significant difference is going to be on Nightblades, depending on how many assassination abilities that you have on your bars. So let me see if I have. Okay, so you can see here that on my back bar here, I actually don't have any assassination abilities at all. Versus my front bar, I have 3 assassination abilities. So on my front bar here, I have an additional 6% additional crit chance, as well as 10% additional crit damage. So actually my bars are off. It should look up like this. Actually, I have my ultimates reversed. So this is what it looks like here. So we actually have a little bit more crit on our front bar as a Magic and Nightblade compared to our back bar, and we should be getting our 10% on back bar because we have an assassination ability on both. So you will see a little bit more crits on our front bar here just because we have 1 additional assassination ability. But like I said, it's only 2% for each assassination ability, so it's not going to be that big of a difference. And this is really only going to be noticeable on Nightblades. Other classes, generally speaking, you will have the same level of crit, except for stamina on both bars. So Magicka tunes, you typically will have the same level of crit chance. Stamina tunes, depending on if you're going with a QD axe sword or if you're not using a QD dagger axe or double daggers, then you might see a higher crit chance on your front bar instead. In that case, you should try to get as many ticks of your dots on your front bar as best you can, so you have that additional crit chance when your dots are ticking. So just to quickly kind of do a summary of this, you have 2 types of dots. You have ground dots, which are AoE dots, so things like Block Aid, Endless Hail, Caltrops. Then you have single target dots, so things like Crippling Grasp and Poison Injection. Ground dots and single target dots, they both inherit the penetration from your current bar, and they inherit the crit chance and the crit damage modifier from your current bar. So penetration, crit chance, crit damage modifier are all on your current bar for both types of dots. So for ground dots, so those are your AoEs like Block Aid and Endless Hail, those inherit the damage from the bar that you are currently on, while single target dots inherit the damage from the bar on which it was cast, or the bar on, or a different way of thinking about it is the bar on which the first tick happens. So the real big difference here is going to be mainly in the damage portion. Ground dots inherit damage from the current bar. Single target dots inherit damage from the bar when the first tick happens. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found it informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.